yeah, there was a few when I was quite young. Um, I grew up with, well, I have five older siblings and my parents as well, both into music. So a lot of different sort of places music was coming from. The most notable one, I think, when I was really young was probably age 3. I got into Busted, which was my sister's favorite band. They obviously broke up when I was like 5 or something, but that was one where it was just exciting. It was a band and they were like the sort of current thing. So I think that kind of drew me initially. The energy of a pop punk band, I guess, when you're that age is pretty appealing. So that was like the first my first one, and then there was Green Day, and there was the White Stripes. Sort of came soon after I really got into, kind of through jamming a bit at school and through like what my brothers were listening to and things like that. I remember those being the first sort of artists I liked. It's all sort of about guitars and things, but I was into literally all sorts of things. My mum would listen to like Magic Radio, and I remember at one point probably knowing like every song that was on Magic Radio, and like my dad was sort of showing us the Beatles and Wishbone Ash. Wishbone Ash, his favorite band, so like sort of classic rock as well. I grew up with.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see some of these influences on your sound, um, in part at least. But so, um, what was your first kind of experience of actually making your own music?
Um, I was writing songs from when I was really, really young. I mean, me and my sister Margie used to write songs a lot, and Katrina as well. One of my sisters used to write songs. My oldest brother Liam and my oldest sister Rosanna were kind of in a band when I was fairly young as well. Um, and so like I don't know, all of that was kind of happening, and I got into kind of wanting to do all that stuff quite young through that really. Just it being quite a casual thing, really. I think the first like time I was properly sort of writing songs, I was probably like probably from the age of about 6 or 7. I was in a band with my sister Margarita, who's just older than me, and my two cousins, and we would sort of have a sleepover at our cousin's house and like write. We'd all go off and write our tunes and then sort of perform them in the living room, sort of thing. Uh, and so yeah, I was probably like 5 or 6 when I wrote my first tune. Really, I think I'd learned like 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 when you're first learning guitar, it's like 3 chord, like D, G, and E minor or something, and
Yeah.
then you just kind of went from that, and like, or a lot of the time it's just a cappella, you're just literally writing the song. But yeah, it was quite, started very, very young from that. It was kind of just fun, but like for me, I was a bit like I took it quite seriously throughout, even when I was in bands in school and stuff. I was kind of always the one who was taking it particularly seriously.
Was that because you thought, it would be pretty awesome to pursue this professionally? Did you have that in the back of your mind from quite early on?
Yeah, I mean, I liked performing in a lot of ways, and I liked sort of just being active, and I liked creating things, and I liked being good at things when I was young. I liked being really, just trying out everything. Um, but music was one that just comes with, I don't know. It just sort of it ended up feeling a bit more profound than any of the other things I was into. I was really into sport. I was really into cooking. Like I was really into acting. I was really into all these different things, but yeah, there was just a thing where it's like with music, it is all your own world and all something that you can create. Every aspect of it can really be you. Um, and I think that's what kind of drew me to it, was kind of constantly, being full of energy and wanting to do things, and like having something that I could literally do on my own, and be good at, or find my own way with it. That was really what I was looking for, I think.
And what would you say was your kind of break, as it were, to taking things a step further with your professional career?
Um, it's hard to say. I mean, it was a constant string of things. Like, you know, I was just writing in whatever way I could. I had my brother's 8-track, which I would steal for a day or two and sort of create little records with on Audacity, which no one should have to use. But yeah, it was, you know, sort of school IT level uh, stuff, and you know, I was kind of making music in that environment for years, and I got a loop pedal as well for my birthday one year, and that kind of changed things for me as well, because I was always trying to be in a band and blah blah blah, and it's just when you're like 12, incredibly difficult to kind of get a committed band together. So I ended up being like, oh, I can just do it on my own, and then eventually completely backtracking from that. But it was from there I kind of got my loop pedal. I started gigging. I'd like, you know, I was just wherever would let me play. Age must be 14 or whatever. You know, in London, I would just go, even if I had to play early or whatever. So I just remember sort of I would go into town constantly and play gigs, and I was just constantly applying, constantly trying to do as much as possible. You know, playing at Westfield, Stratford, and all that sort of crap stuff that you really it's quite intimidating at that point. But I think then from all of that, which was kind of when I was really, you know, I was doing music pretty, even though I was doing GCSEs as well and all of that stuff, like I was doing music, just with all of my spare time. And um, yeah, it was when I did this sort of Glastonbury Emerging Talent competition, or at least applied for it, where it started to feel like something close to a break. You know, you don't really hard to imagine like a big break. There's so many points of entry in the music industry now. It's like a big break is like, you know, being exposed to sort of maybe 1,000 people who might listen to your music. And sort of then from there again, it's another string of years of different stuff. But
Yeah.
when I did that, I kind of ended up signing to Columbia and getting a lot of music industry type emails over the next few months, which was all very exciting. Literally perfectly lined up with while I was doing my GCSEs as well, so it was kind of like priorities time. Um, and yeah, ended up finding everyone who I would work with, and kind of, I don't know, actually, you know, rather than just playing gigs, rather than just doing everything you possibly can, you kind of have people to talk about what you can actually do to do music full time, really, and what you know the best things to do are, because it's just such, you know, there's so many different aspects to the music industry, obviously, in promoting yourself, that is a total minefield before you kind of have anyone to help. So yeah, it was a long process, but eventually kind of got to that point, and from there it's kind of felt like a professional career. So
Yeah.
that's, you
Cool.
know, that's really interesting.
And so the the process like behind making your first record, what do you think about the car? It sounds like you'd already put in a lot of time into kind of honing your craft. Like you wrote songs from when you were very young. Um, you know, you did lots of gigging, and you had this like love the music. So, you know, was it a question of the 11 songs on the record? They're just a snapshot of where you were at that time. They you know, it's a fantastic album, but you know, it sounds like it was only a part of your journey up to that point. So like, how did you whittle things
Yeah,
down to choosing 11 songs, and how did
yeah,
you a lot of
yeah.
time and then just 11 songs? It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, people always kind of say that about your first album being like, you know, your life's work up until that point. But it was kind of that, but it was only really a couple of years, you know, it was only 2, 3 years, really, of songs that went into the first album. The first ones I wrote being Bethlehem and Brazil, um, which was sort of, I mean, Bethlehem I'd had online for a while as like one of the sort of earlier recordings I'd done from home. And Brazil that I just started. And
Sorry, my phone's connected to my laptop for some reason.
oh, I hate when, yeah,
No idea why.
yeah. But no, yeah, so I'd sort of been at that, and I think I don't know. It still was kind of a new project. Like you know, it was very broken up, and it was very like in between all this other stuff I was figuring out and doing. You know, in between the touring and that, I would just go and record as many songs as I had, and eventually wound up at 11. Like I didn't use loads of songs from before because I just felt like, you know, it was always kind of getting better, and I wanted to try new things. I wanted to work with, you know, the different producers that, you know, see who sort of wanted to work with me and build up and sort of learn more and keep trying to do new things really. Um, and yeah, I think, you know, working with the people who I did as well. So initially I was just working with Max Marlowe, who produced Brazil, who I just kind of met on the internet again before anything sort of kicked off. Um, and then sort of ended up working with Neil Comber and James Ford and Rostam, and like, you know, I think if I hadn't had wanted to just kind of carry some of the songs that I already had, it would have been much less. I would have learned a lot less, and it would have, you know, the record I don't think would have been as good or as, you know,
Would have been less
um,
of a step forward, really.
yeah, exactly. Like I had a lot of music, and I've always been writing, but it was just like, you know, I think when you're making records, it's like you do kind of have to let them encompass this little period of time and kind of really focus on it for that, because I don't know, you're gonna have to do it again at some point. And I
Yeah,
think that's what I was learning, was a new process, a more intense process really, and just like, you know, kind of flipping around and making creativity really at the heart of my life. It wasn't like my spare time anymore. It was just like, and it did feel like my life for a long time, but it was just in a different way, where it was like literally focusing on music. It was such a new thing for me. Um, but yeah, I think the one thing is like that I've always thought is when, you know, when you're working on music, working with the label, it's like it can be such a strange, fickle industry. People like to describe it as whatever. It's just like the one thing that can't be taken away is like what you learn from the experience. And, you know, I think it's so important to kind of put yourself in environments where you are going to learn from people and aren't going to be super confident or aren't going to be doing the thing you normally do.
yeah,
Um, which is kind of the way I try to approach each project or whatever I'm working on, is just like having a new setup and not relying on the same sort of, not ever getting comfortable with a format, because as soon as I do that, I just start writing like shit pulp songs or whatever. I just start doing the same thing, and I'm like, why can't I make good music? Because I just think I know what I'm doing and I don't.
so the first record, when I listened to it for the first time, I heard kind of influences of different artists, or what I thought were influences from different artists, and and
Mm.
then and then your kind of fresh take on stuff. And I first heard it on the radio, and I was like, you know, I found it quite refreshing, because you hear music like this less these days on the radio than, I don't know, like 15 years ago. Um, and you know, who would you say, like, if you had to think of people who really influence your sound, who would you say that they are?
Um, there's so many. I think like right now, um, Bob Dylan a lot. I just really in a quite into lyrics at the minute, and quite into how that sort of links up with music, and, you know, creating the sort of mutual feeling between the two, um that Dylan was so good at, and yet just so raw. Like I think the rawness has kind of been really a thing for me that I've tried to keep in my music. um St. Vincent, really. I think all of the guitar stuff I try and do is very much, she's kind of my influence for that. Um, just having the guitar at the center of sort of modern pop music is so cool, and, you know, she does it in a really in your face kind of way. But also, you know, subtle when it needs to be subtle as well. And you know, there's just a lot that I learn, I think, musically from her. And the songwriting's great. Like I love the songs. I think she's always finding an interesting way to get to kind of the tune that she's making. You know, it always seems like it's gone down a sort of left wing route, which is quite fun. And yeah, I mean, oh, it's so hard picking influences because I'm just kind of like it's new every day. I'm like, oh, I'm really influenced by
Yeah.
this band. You know, one of the first bands I really wanted to be like was Unknown Mortal Orchestra when I was like 15, um, 14, 15, hearing Swim and Sleep Like a Shark. I was like, that is how I want to sound. Uh, because it just felt fresh and it was like, I think psychedelia music, psychedelia, it's like a whatever, always kind of appealed to me from like Strawberry Fields and stuff. It just felt like, I don't know, whatever I was going to do, whether it was, you know, whatever kind of projects I was working on, it would kind of always be tinged with a bit of UMO, a bit of sort of, you know, Beatles, a bit of that sort of psychedelic world because it's just so fun and so I don't know, music's kind of translates it so well. Like the sort of trippiness is kind of yeah, a bizarre thing in music that just seems to click emotionally.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's very true that when you're into music, um, you know, and when it's a great passion of yours, it's like almost every day or every week there's a new thing that's like the rabbit
Yeah,
hole that you're currently exploring. You know, if you've just got into like Dylan or something, or anyone, Bowie or whoever it might be, you could find yourself just listening to like all their albums, watching all their interviews, or just like investigating
yeah.
really in depth. I mean, that's what it is to be a fan, really. What an amazing
No,
experience recording your new album, Zeros, in Nashville must have been. How come you chose to record it in Nashville?
primarily because the producer who I wanted to work with, Jay Joyce, has a studio out there where he sort of works from. It's like a big converted church, and it's pretty amazing. Like it's just kind of one big live room, and they've kind of got all these instruments, and it's you know it's pretty decked out. It's sort of been going, you know, obviously collecting bits over the years. He's been working on music, and yeah, I just really liked him. I kind of was able to send him the songs, and he seemed really into it, and we just got on the phone, and I thought, you know, we just clicked really well. I felt like he kind of got where I was trying to go with the songs, and kind of wanted to do something really fun with it and really interesting, and you know, I felt like he had a desire to experiment with it, and actually was kind of excited about, you know, the routes I was going down, and wanted to, you know, chip in, and kind of that's what I wanted really, was someone who's going to be excited about it. And um but yeah, Nashville itself, like it's a great place to work on music. You know, we also had so many friends there who were helping us out. Bailey, who techs my guitars in America a lot of the time, um was living out there, and so was just kind of driving us around, helping us out, which is great. And my friend Soren Bryce, who's actually just moved to London, but she was living in Nashville at the time as well. It's like another musician, and you know, it was just a nice environment where, because you know, we could kind of get around and see everyone fairly easily. It was just like this lovely environment of being working on an album and then just having kind of an escape from it as well, and just, you know, being able to be very, not have obligations that get in the way, but like also just be able to relax and like be able to have other shit to do, which I think is important. You know, not getting so bogged down. You know, we barely had a day that went past 8 or 9 o'clock. Like we didn't do any late nights really. We might have done some right at the end, but like the whole record really wasn't meant to be meticulous. I don't think. In you know, the songwriting was quite meticulous, but the recording of it really had to be instantaneous and really had to be capturing a moment, capturing an energy. So like, yeah, it just felt like a very loose and free environment, and creative but fast paced. And I think that's kind of when you can find, you know, a team of people who can work in that way and work very quickly together. I think that's when creatively you find the best stuff, because you just get a few hours into, you can be making anything in the world, you get a few hours in and you're not going anywhere, and it's just like the most the most stressful environment, and just like non conducive to any creativity. So yeah, the space and the freedom and the pace of it all was just like kind of perfect for this
It's
album.
interesting that you guys didn't do too many late nights, because a lot of people sort of push themselves into that type of thing, and you do end up burning out, I think, like
Hmm.
eventually. it's inevitable. And taking time away from something, especially something as intense as making a record, can actually make the whole process happier and the result better. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I think you know, it's weird sometimes when I'm like, if you know, I notice more and more the times when I'm like not enjoying my job. I'm like, I should really be enjoying my job. Like, I should really, this is, you know, although I want to take it very seriously, like, should really be enjoying this. And like, I think that is when, you know, you find this, because when you're stressed, when you're just like, when everything's just too much in your head, like, it, yeah, it's not really conducive to making good stuff. I mean, you know, a couple good ideas come out of a stressful time, but really putting an album together is just, you know, about really being present and being in the moment and you know, making the most out of the time you do choose to have, rather than having all the time in the world and just like completely ruining yourself over it. I don't think, you know, I don't think that works for me. So yeah, I've tried more and more recently to just, I don't know, if I make sure I pick the time and um, do that, and then take space from it. Really,
how would you say that Zeros kind of differs in sound? What do you think about the car?
I think like product in the production, like I can kind of notice a there's quite I think maybe the difference in just working with James Ford and working with Jay Joyce is like there's definitely a warmth to James Ford's production that Jay Joyce is much more like sharp and uh, direct sounding, and they're both kind of cool, but that kind of immediately strikes me as there's just a bit more of a crispiness to Zero's overall sound, and I think that combined with sort of the, you know, the idea of playing with a band for the whole thing, and just like it all being about the energy and all being about feeling in the room and having little weird vocal ad libs from everyone in it, and just like, you know, everyone feeling free to do their thing. Like, it has a sort of pace and a sort of rush to it that maybe What Do You Think the Car doesn't quite have. Like, I think Zeros was, it's quite an intense and fast paced and quite you know, zingy. And I think What Do You Think the Car maybe is just a bit more mellow and a bit more, it's warm, and I like that character, but I think I definitely realized how I could exert and encourage a sort of certain energy with in the recording space. I think that is so, as pretentious as it is, it's so important to like focus on a vibe, focus on an energy, not be like you have to play the part really right. It's like it's not that. It's like you have to get the vibe really right before anything else.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
sure.
so that was kind of my thinking, and that was kind of what led to, yeah, I think a slightly more energetic and um, you know, more considered record from on my part. Um, but yeah, it was all about the sort of energy and the recording environment. It was very cell by cell on the first album, and this was a band.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point that you make about vibe. I mean, particularly when it comes to like vocals or something like that.
Hmm.
If you don't feel right or you don't feel kind of
Yeah.
excited and psyched to be working on a project, you really aren't going to deliver the same thing.
No, exactly. And it's always the first couple of takes that are the best. And like, you know, if you're looking for something specific, like sometimes you're never going to find it. And, you know, oftentimes you have to go with what what what's happening in the room right now. If this is what feels right, then this is what's right.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a very good point. So how have you been adjusting to the era of coronavirus? Are you missing playing live a lot? And do you have any kind of gigs tentatively scheduled for next year and stuff? I've seen obviously a lot of people.
Yeah.
I keep on getting announcements, and I'm just saying that they all go ahead.
Yeah, I know it's strange. I mean, yeah, I am missing gigs. I'm quite looking forward to the rest of this year, really, because I've been busy in lockdown, you know, and it's just been like hard to find your footing when it's just, you know, in the build up to an album, it's just like one thing after the next. And in this environment, it's not like you're going somewhere to do something. It's like everything you do. you kind of have to do in your own environment. You have to kind of do in your own space. You have to, you know, figure out yourself and get, you know, send off yourself. And it's like, just, it's been a hell of a lot of responsibility doing all of that and working on a record and just being able to sort of figure out what is just too much work in this environment because it's so different. So yeah, so that's been interesting for a while, but like, yeah, we got gigs booked in March, which, as we say, it's like a lot can change. You know, the world 6 months ago was very different, so a lot can change. But you know, we'll have to see. Well, you know, they'll happen as soon as they can. Obviously, I want to tour the album, but at the minute, you know, as I say, I'm feeling kind of good about the next few months because I'm just trying to work on writing here. I've got a few bits already that I'm quite excited about, and you know, as you know, as kind of normal for me, I want to do things, you know, work on recording the record a slightly different way. And I think just right now is all about kind of what I can achieve from my own studio, what I can achieve from here. I'd love to produce my own next record. I'm working a bit with Will, who is in my band, who I live with, and just kind of seeing where that all ends up. But yeah, it's, you know, missing the gigs, obviously wishing we could have had a summer of festivals and things like that. It would have been so nice to do. You know, the album was obviously supposed to come out at the start of the summer as well, which would have been lovely. But hopefully that can all just happen next year, really. But I'm, you know, I'm quite content with writing because I haven't had the time I've wanted to write, and I have a hell of a lot of ideas now. You know, Zeros took so long to come out. It's just been like, I'm kind of ready for the next thing now.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense, and you know, fingers crossed that things go ahead next year. So, as this is the greatest music of all time podcast, I often ask, you know, people who their favorite artists of all time are. But as you correctly pointed out, you know, your favorites change from day to day or week to week. So, you know, who are you listening to at the moment?
The one that's right now that is I've been listening to a lot, Sunny and the Sunsets, who I was shown very recently, who's been around for a few years. As I say, like you know, the music that inspired Zeros was a lot of the time quite intense, and like I wanted a certain intensity, and sort of past that now. I'm kind of into very, very relaxed music and like the simpler chords, and like Sunny and the Sunsets just does that really well, really groovy music. There's like Moods, Baby Moods is the album that I've been listening to a lot, and it's got some really, really cool, some really cool hooks, some really fun sort of Bell and Sebastian type sort of hooks, and you know, kind of playful but also feels a bit melancholic, just kind of right in that nice little pocket that I love, a sort of happy tinged melancholia of like, you know, all the artists who I love really kind of fit into that. They're like Baxter Jury and Ben and Sebastian, and yeah. So yeah, there's something really cool about Sunny and the Sunsets that I've been into, and I just kind of keep putting it on. I've been listening to a lot of Paul McCartney as well, actually, at the minute. Kind of, always deliberating over who my favourite Beatle is, but Every Night is a tune I've been listening to. I think it's from his first solo record that he made, and it's just cool because going back into that psychedelia thing, like it shows that the instrumentation doesn't really matter if you've got the ideas. Like Every Night, he's kind of got this weird delayed acoustic guitar, and like it kind of does the job of, you know, 10 instruments, or you know, sort of phaser and whatever you could throw on top of it. It's like just this one little simple idea kind of does that. So yeah, every night's been a tune that I've been banging out.
Oh yeah, that is such a good song. Paul McCartney. I mean, the Beatles in general and their solo careers are pretty much, you know, that's a good life. If you just listen to nothing,
Yeah,
that you'd have a great life. Like as
yeah,
bad as it
it's
would be
both
to miss out on all the other stuff.
yeah, totally. I think that I just, you know, the Beatles are an easy band to hate on because they're the best band ever. So it's like people love being like, "Oh, the Beatles are shit," but the Beatles were so good, so like an unbelievably impressive group of people. And yeah, I can never stop finding new bits to love of all of their careers, as musicians. So yeah, I mean, that Paul McCartney, obviously, you dip in and out of listening to in your time, but it's been a couple of tunes. We uploaded one to SoundCloud the other day. Me and my housemate Josh did what was it? Heart of the Country, which is also a beautiful song
Oh yeah.
from Ram. I kind of always think of like, what was I listening to when I was like 14, 15? Those are generally my favorite songs because they just stick with you, don't they? Like, I I think about Forever Dolphin Love by Conor Moccasin as one of my favorites.
Like
Um,
Connor
Conan Moccasin.
Moccasin. I haven't heard of him. Who is?
It, it's really cool. He's done all sorts of projects. I don't really know much about him as a person. He did Soft Hair with L.A. Priest from Late of the Pier. Do you remember Late of the Pier?
Yeah.
They sort of Conor Moccasin and one of the guys from Late of the Pier had a collab record called Soft Hair, and this is probably one of my favorite songs. Lying Has to Stop from that album is amazing. Sort of just weird, warped. I don't even know what genre to call it. It's sort of like pre-DeMarco music, like just weirder. The sort of early Conor Moccasin stuff is like, yeah. But yeah, Forever Dolphin Love, that record is just so good. It's like a 10-minute track and goes through all these different worlds, but just such weird little hooks, the cool like muted guitar sounds, lots of sort of vibrato-y stuff. Everything's just kind of warped and wavering, and I don't know. It goes from like one amazing groove, which just kind of happens, it just is there, into just a whole other completely different song, which is just equally beautiful. And like, I don't know. I think there's something just kind of impossible and kind of effortless about Conor Moccasin's music that is like just makes it so enticing. So yeah, that
I noted that down.
me.
I haven't heard that yet, but that sounds great.
I mean, Debaser by Pixies is probably
Oh,
one of my favorites.
such a good song.
It's hard to pick a Pixies song as my favorite, but that is a really, really good one. I think Pixies are probably one of the best recorded, if not the best recorded, best sounding rock bands ever. I know they work with Steve Albini on some of their stuff, but like, it just always puts you right in the room, and just his voice as well is so uniquely energetic. And Debaser is just that perfectly. Just that all of that stuff is so weird and
Sounds
really,
like else that
yeah,
record. It's just like a
yeah,
complete
exactly.
slap in the face. That record. It's so aggressive, but in such a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I kind of really got into Pixies when I was kind of first learning guitar. I used to play Where's My Mind on my loop pedal at almost like every gig I did. It's just a good one. Get everyone in the crowd doing the oohs and stuff. And
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean Pixies just rock so hard on record, and I've always kind of admired that energy and the way they sort of capture the whole thing. And I don't know, it's always something slightly different as well. So
They are
yeah.
brilliant. They came on the podcast last year, and then we went to see them at the Troubadour in Los Angeles afterwards,
Amazing.
which was pretty They were very impressive. It was cool to see them in a small venue like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're incredible.
I got Story 2 by Clipping. Do you
Clipping.
listen to
I haven't
Clipping?
I haven't heard of Clipping.
They are. It's so. I mean, the front man, the rapper, is David Diggs, who was actually more recently than this record in Hamilton,
Oh,
which people might know him more for now. I don't know, but Clipping has been one of my favorite things since I was sort of 13, 14. I don't really remember why, but me and my friends just kind of got really, really into it. It was just this whole sort of kind of industrial, just very experimental hip hop that we'd never really encountered at that age, and the record clipping kind of is sort of ingrained in me. But Story 2 is, I mean, just it's like 2 minute song. It's like one of the most intense 2 minutes of music, and it's so good. Kind of just I love when music sort of really emulates the sort of emotion in the lyrics or whatever, and like it's just this sort of arpeggio, I guess, this really stabby, kind of percussive sounding, kind of melodic sounding, arpeggio thing, which just is constantly getting sort of faster and more intense and more chaotic. And there's, the backing is quite simple, but it just is constantly getting more and more intense. And lyrically in the song, it's like, I think there's kind of there's a few clipping songs where they sort of tell a story, so I hope I don't get this one wrong, but like it's kind of, I think there's like a fire or something, and it's sort of building this world around someone's like going home from work, they've had a terrible day, and then gradually it goes along, and like it's like constantly getting more intense, like he's like, what the fuck is going on? And then it's like the last line, it's like, why would you let me die? Why won't you just let me die? And it's like, it sounds very, very, very intense, but it's just so seamless, and like I can't even, I don't even have words for how good that song is. But I think just the intensity of it, which I'm obviously doing a great job at describing, and the sort of sync up between the lyrics and the instrumentation in such a creative way, I found just.
So the song's called
always
Story 2.
Story 2, by Clipping, which is
Check that.
really, really good one.
How did he end up in Hamilton after Clipping?
I have no idea.
Are they still going, Clipping?
Yeah, Clipping. I think I think they released now, but they've been done a few sort of like concept-y albums the last few years, Splendor and Misery, and I think there existed an Addiction to Blood. It's another one. So that was more recent. So yeah, it's all very intense, but they are an incredibly good. It's David Diggs and then two other producers. I'm not sure of their names. I'm pretty sure they sort of produce the music and stuff. They've done a remix of one of my songs as well, which I was delighted about. Isambard.
Oh right.
So
how did that come about? Did you get in touch with them after that tune?
It was one of the like first, I'd only been signed to Columbia for maybe a year, if that even, and we were just talking about remixes, and they were like, we can reach out to people to do remixes, and I was like, oh man, like Clipping, I want them to do a remix. And I was just kind of like laughing because like this was like one of my favorite sort of outfits, and I was just like, oh, get Clipping to do a remix of it, and they went and did it. And like, I don't know, I've never been in contact with them, but that's the music industry magic. They just kind of sorted it out. They were like, oh, Clipping will do a remix. So I was pretty delighted with that.
I'm gonna have to check out that remix.
Yeah, it's cool, and it was very cool because in Clipping form, like they tied in the remix into like the theme of their records that had just come out. Like it's all kind of felt like it was, even though it was a remix, it felt like it was part of it. Like I just found that so cool. That's
amazing. That must have been such a great feeling to be really into their music, and then to just have...
there's a few moments, when because you're always meeting people in the music industry, but like there's a few moments where it really means something, and it's someone you really look up to, and that's kind of one of them, being like, oh my god, it's actually one of my favorite artists, sort of engaging with my music, making a remix. Like that's just like such an amazing feeling, and for it to be really cool and also exist in a realm that I like love of their music, it's like it's quite nice tie-in.
Yeah, sure.
I've been thinking a lot about Dirty Projectors and About to Die.
About to Die by Dirty Projectors. I've heard of Dirty Projectors either.
I should have sent these over. Dirty Projectors.
It's all good because I'll have some music to listen to after this.
I mean, yeah, all of these records are pretty fantastic.
One of the main
But
reasons why I
and
like doing this podcast is to get good recommendations.
yeah, you find it all. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've been obsessed with Dirty Projectors since I was probably 15 or so. Um, and About to Die is a single off of Swing Low Magellan, which um, it's just so cool. Like it's just weird. I think the thing that drew me to it when I first heard it was just the weirdness of it and how, you know, the groove is strange. It has a sort of talking drum thing, like a sound, which is ingrained into the groove. It keeps coming round. Um, the bass line is just completely, constantly moving. It's almost a percussive instrument in the song, like as well as being melodic. Like it's just constantly on, one particular beat, like an eighth note or something. It just constantly goes on, and it's really really strange. And then there's sort of banjo at one point. There's like a sort of harpy, stringy sound at one point, and it's just constantly like jumping, in terms of its chords, in terms of its sounds, and yeah, I think all of that combined and it being so catchy, kind of really, I think, has made it a song that I just keep coming back to. And Dirty Projectors are kind of one of my favorite bands, because there's always an element of weirdness, and sometimes it can be quite clinical, sometimes it can be quite loose, and like I like kind of jumping between those worlds. So yeah, I think About to Die is just a weird tune, and yet it's so hooky, and I think that's kind of where my favorite music often lies.
Yeah, really interesting when talking to artists about what music that they listen to. It's just strange to think of people who have a certain sound like finding enjoyment in other things. But then again, I can see how people like Pixies would definitely influence you.
Yeah, it's a weird one because oftentimes you find yourself looking for, something to get inspired by that isn't necessarily going to sound like your music. If you're pinching an idea from someone, you don't want it to be sort of like your next door neighbor.
Yeah,
It's like you kind of have to look all around the space to see what you can do, what you can make more interesting. Because yeah, it's definitely a lot of the time, the most bands that have the substantial impact on me are quite further left
left
in
field.
music
Yeah,
than I am. But yeah, I make music that is more in that world that I just haven't sort of released. I haven't sort of made the project for. It's just like I don't
but
know. I
also
feel
you
like
probably take
I
tiny
do.
little elements of these things
Yeah.
that yeah, and it all just kind of blends into your sound.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of there's definitely a Dirty Projectors sort of sensibility to some of the tunes, like Emily on the sort of on Zeros feels like a big Dirty Projectors influence, and like there's definitely moments where I feel like the strange melodies, the strange chords, the sort of jumping around in sounds, like it's very hard to define with a band like that, but like those sort of little things that I can pick up on, kind of I do sort of, yeah, place here and there as an influence, because they are one of my favorite outfits. And I saw them live actually for the first time at Green Man Festival, maybe year before last, and that was amazing because when you've just been waiting to see a band for years and then you kind of finally do, and it's like it's a big full circle. So yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Whenever someone mentions live music, I just get very distracted with thinking, God, how much I want to go to a gig.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did get to see Van Morrison a few weeks ago. He's
Oh,
still gigging, or he's restarted gigging. It was
oh
completely
right.
ago. So yeah, fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Well,
It'll.
he's gone sort of absent without mask sort of thing. He's kind of
Yeah.
he's doing like an anti-mask record or something, isn't he?
Well, I don't think it was anti-masks, but I think he just wanted to do something to keep live music going. But the media did kind of kind of project this image of him as a real
Really?
risk to health, anti-vaxxer, anti-mask type of vibe, which, you know, initially it was quite shocking to see somebody
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But I think his point was more that we need to do more to keep the creative industries alive. And in fact, I think Eric Clapton has kind of joined the campaign that he was
Right.
starting. But to be honest, it was a disastrous PR move from Van Morrison.
Yeah, there's
Everybody
definitely like,
thinks he's an idiot now.
yeah, you kind of have to be very clear with that stuff in a time like this, because at the end of the day, like if, you know, I guess the people who you're reaching out to, talking to, take it as, don't wear a mask, then you've got it wrong, kind of, which is a shame. Yeah, it's a difficult one right now because kind of everyone's just looking at their phones and kind of observant, being very, very observant, but also kind of being half observant and just being like, oh, that's what so and so said. What was? Are you familiar with much Sufjan Stevens?
Sufjan Stevens.
Sufjan Stevens, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Do
Sufjan Stevens, or is this someone else?
Yeah, yeah, that guy, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I love
yeah.
Sufjan.
Yeah, he's All for Myself from the Age of Ards. That record is, I mean, the Age of Ards was again a big sort of experimental push when I was sort of, going through those tumultuous times that talked about a lot as being, where your favorite music sort of comes from. Uh, and it's the grandness of this record, and like, which sort of why people who don't like it, but like for me it just felt so perfect to listen to, and it still is a record I can listen to back to front, even though it's very long and tiresome. Like, it's kind of not tiresome because it's just so interesting and vast. Like, All for Myself I kind of loved because there's not an awful lot of percussion, and when there is percussion it's done in a really interesting way, and it's just very sort of, it feels very full and very epic without being particularly tight, without being particularly, um, you know, full of different instruments. It's like the vocals are kind of dotted all over the place and kind of feel like they're coming in at different times, and it just gives it this sort of group vocal sound that isn't just kind of old man in a pub singing sort of vibe. Like, it's kind of really, really intense and really feels, I don't know, like it's after something. All for Myself, I guess the theme of the song does kind of feel like a longing. I want it all for myself, sort of thing. But yeah, it's a real rush listening to a song like that, where it just is constantly kind of going upward and constantly building. And I think in terms of the melodies and chords I use, that sort of record, that song in particular, kind of inspired me to, I don't know, have this sort of ascension through music, which I really, really love. And like, just sort of, whether it takes a long time to do it or whether it's just like quite immediate, just like moving upward is such a vital part of music, I think. And just like, you know, ascending from the sort of base point of the song into something really, rocket ship flies into the air, fist pump sort of moment. Yeah, so I again, a very sort of experimental tune. It feels like, but the record was very sort of together, and that was, yeah, one of the sort of big jams of my teenage years, the Age of Arts.
Yeah, that album. I mean, pretty much everything that he does is incredibly original and
Yeah,
pretty cool. Didn't he have a project at one stage where he was going to make an album about every state?
yeah, I think that was just like a PR stunt. He did two, and then I don't think he's done any since. But I think it is a good PR move. I kind of want to do something like that. Just tell
Yeah,
everyone I'm going to do one thing and do something completely different. But it's not like he's stopped making records.
oh,
He's like,
very prolific, very creative
yeah,
guy. I mean, it could be that he was intending on doing it and then he just felt trapped. You know, that would be a ridiculous amount of work. And what if you had just got a bit bored of the concept as well?
I mean, yeah. But as soon as you get to like Rhode Island, like, what are you writing about? There's like a couple things maybe here and there, but like, how much do you know about that state? How much do
Yeah,
you know about Alaska? Alaska could be good.
Alaska would probably be. I mean, they're probably amazing things to find and see in most
Just
states.
funny if every state is going to be a lot. Montana, like, what are you gonna? Where are you gonna go? I wouldn't know where to start with Montana.
Oh, Montana, I reckon you could go to like the on their kind of ranches and like cowboy type things,
Yeah.
and you could probably write some kind of American cowboy inspired music. Get a
I
bit,
just always felt kind of a bit intimidated driving through that part of the world. Really,
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of, strange sort of like religious billboards, and I don't know, just sort of, yeah, not rarely end up staying anywhere around there. So I feel like I wouldn't know the first thing. But as you say, yeah, you could probably get inspired
I,
by any of the states
oh,
in America if you went there and found the right spot.
yeah, for sure. I think maybe there are some states that are a bit more bleak than others, but Montana, I think there's some great like countryside and stuff, so you could be at one with
Nice.
nature. But with some American states, I wouldn't know where to start. And I mean,
Yeah.
Montana, in reality, I wouldn't really know where to start, or like Wyoming. Or,
Yeah, Wyoming, that's another one. Wouldn't know the first thing. But I'm sure, he's probably got a few years left, Mr. Stevens. So
yeah, you can
who
pick
knows?
it up. You can pick it back up.
He made two great I mean, Come and Feel the Illinois is just such a good album.
Yeah,
So
best.
what can you say?
And there
If
was,
he
I
did it,
think, the one about Michigan.
yeah,
That was a great one.
that's great. It's got yeah, a few brilliant songs on it. The John Wayne Gacy Jr. song is pretty crazy. But
I quite like
and
for the Widows in Paradise.
yeah, I was just gonna say that's and the
The
something
father
in
belong.
utility. Yeah, that's a brilliant song again.
Yeah, yes, he's a fantastic artist. So who's after Sufjan?
I mean, I had the Water Boys, The Whole of the Moon,
The
which
Waterboy.
is
Yeah,
I think just a perfect song, really. Um, the way the bass doesn't come in until about a minute in is great. It's just the sort of piano and the drums and the vocal. But yeah, Mike Scott's vocals, I mean, and the lyrics are just so sort of perfect and so well constructed. And again, it's just one of those sort of always ascending tunes. You know, it really manages to have that sort of pop hook and really tell the story. Um, and yeah, it's just one of those sort of moments where they got it so right with very simple sort of setup. And I think yeah, it's kind of one of my favorite songs. Good sort of karaoke tune to do as well. That sort of explosion moment is amazing, and like yeah, a lot of moments from that where I definitely kind of take an influence myself from those Water Boys records that were quite important. I think through Zeros, when I was sort of writing the first batch of songs, I was listening to a lot of Water Boys. Um,
yeah, I
they've
can
got
see
some
that.
amazing music songs, amazing lyrics. So yeah, that one's really really important for me.
Yeah, that is an absolute tune. And yeah, as I said, I can kind of see their influence on you. Um, do you have any more tunes on your list?
I might have one more if you want to get. I have a load written down. This is I mean wasn't sure how many you want, but
I mean, usually we do about between 5 and 10. I mean, we've got more than I need for the podcast. But I'm quite curious because some of the ones that I know I really like, and then the ones that I don't know, I'm looking forward to listening to.
I've
So,
got like four more written down
okay,
here.
let's go through them. I'd love
We
to hear
should
them.
just talk about some more tunes. Yeah, I mean, MF Doom, but
Oh yeah,
his one of his other projects, JJ Doom, which is still him, for some reason. He just likes doing that. Governor, that that was kind of introduced me to MF Doom weirdly because that sort of came out when I was in school, and I hadn't really listened to Mad Villainy yet. I hadn't listened to Food or any of the sort of classic stuff much, if at all. And yeah, when Governor came out, it was just really cool because he's so. I mean, the beat is cool. Like I don't know if I would say it's definitely his best song because he just has a lot of insane music that is so good for different reasons. And obviously the stuff with Madlib is so well produced and so such a fantastic record. Um, but this one, it's just a wordplay. Interesting that he kind of, I think he grew up in the UK, so the kind of whole "Hello, Governor" sort of element to the song is kind of feels like a bit tongue in cheek to that, which is cool. But there's just, I mean, he just seems to never run out of insanely interesting bars, and just seems to have a way of getting to um, lyrics that no one else is capable of getting to, with a sort of element of simplicity, and just he just has a knack, it seems, of just like um, I don't know, picking things up and throwing lyrics out that are kind of seemingly quite simplistic, but insanely interesting. Bit of a sort of Mike, get a similar level of joy as I do from like Mike Skinner's lyrics, where it's just kind of weird. What's it in this song, Governor? Who can knock the most dead birds out the sky and then spread a lie and say they know why? There's just so many strange little lines like that, which I don't really know if I understand, but I really enjoy listening to. So yeah, I think that's one up there for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I hadn't heard of the JJ Doom project.
Yeah,
I
Keys to the Cuffs is the album name. Um,
yeah, I love MF Doom. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out. That's a very good tip.
yeah, it's cool. I mean, he's got so many different little side projects, so it's hard to keep track. Like there's like the Vaudeville Villain, Victor Vaughan, Vaudeville Villain. That album's great. Like another of his projects, and like yeah, it seems to kind of never end. You're always just finding
Yeah,
little snippets of MF.
yeah, he's super.
Um, I also had written down uh, "Why Should I Love You" by Kate Bush
All right. Yeah.
from the Red Shoes, which is maybe one of the lesser known, lesser loved Kate Bush albums, but still really really good. Just like it has those sort of still has a sort of operatic vocals in the background and kind of has some really interesting stuff, but it's kind of yeah, still manages to be quite a hard hitting, impactful pop tune and um, the hook. I think I always love an epic entry into the chorus and just like the of all the people in the world, like that line when it sort of just slaps you into the chorus. I just think it's so perfect and it's just so well built up. The rest of the song comes down and then you're kind of thrust into this just like infectious chorus. So yeah, Why Should I Love You is yeah,
That is a
great
brilliant.
tune.
Most Kate Bush stuff I really like.
Yeah, it's always interesting, isn't it? Like, there's never really a moment where you're like, "Oh, this is boring." Like, you
Yeah,
can't really get that listening to Kate Bush.
very true. She's amazingly consistent. So who's after Kate Bush?
Oh, Saint Vincent, who is one of my faves, one of my all-time faves. The Party I wrote down. I mean, I could put any number of Saint Vincent songs. This one I kind of think of as, um, you know, I guess it's a bit earlier in the discography when she's still kind of making stuff that was quite jazz tinged, quite heavily jazzy, and yeah, the party just kind of seamlessly goes through different sort of time signatures and things, which are really cool. Um, I just feel like there's a certain what thing about like a musician who I really look up to, like Annie Clark, is just when she's doing. Obviously, she can construct some really really intense and really incredible full productions, but like sometimes the stuff that feels a little simple and feels like you're really sort of connecting with the artist is kind of also just something really really great. So yeah, the party I like really kind of weird lyric concept and um, yeah, the jumping around and the sort of just strangeness of all the melodies and all of that is just kind of why consistent in a lot of the music I love. But yeah, the party's a tune. Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, I mean St. Vincent. I can see that. See the kind of you mentioned the influence of her guitar playing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's just so. I mean, it's cool because it's also. It's like seems to be have a real sort of modern sensibility, but comes from a really sort of heavily sort of jazz influenced place, and like just seems to tie in so many things that I love in music and do it in a contemporary way. You know, all talk of like guitar, the end of guitar music, the end of rock and roll, whatever. But it's like when there's people doing, you know, doing what she does on guitar, it's just like you can never not find that exhilarating when someone puts it in a new context and it feels new and it's like it's not a dated instrument. It's just like the way you look at playing it, the way that you look at inserting it into a song. You know,
yeah.
you can't necessarily do the same things now nowadays with the guitar because everyone's heard what a guitar sounds like, you know. But there's still new ways to do it, and I think that's what I you know inspires me a lot about St. Vincent. It's like, yeah, guitar music is still kicking, man.
Sure, and I think it's kind of the people who say it's all been done before. It's all dependent on the context, isn't it? It's all dependent on the context, whether it's a musical context where you're putting the guitar in, or like
Mm.
lyrical context, and then so lyrics also have a context in terms of what era are these lyrics being written in. So
So a lot of the biggest records recently, you know, not maybe not necessarily the trap records, although some of them, like a lot of the biggest records recently, have had guitars in them. Like most of them kind of still do, somewhere along the line. Like they may not be front and center, but you know, they're still waiting their turn. Um, and you
and
know,
it's
it's
not
I
a
mean,
prerequisite for a good record to have guitar. It's got
no,
to be the
exactly. It
right
doesn't
way.
always need it, which is why I love Saint Vincent as well, because there's moments where, like in the party, where pretty much the whole tune, I don't think there's a guitar, even though she is like, you know, one of the best at it at the minute. Like, you know, songs like New York as well, songs like Marry Me. Um, it's like, you know, you can fantasize about what the guitar is or isn't to music, but really, you know, we yeah we can't sort of hang on to this hope that guitar's going to save music because it's like no, there's loads of great music without it. It's like there's loads of great music with it still. It's like I don't know, really hard to see where the argument's coming from other than wanting the same shite again. um, you know, so yeah. I mean, by all means, shred, but shred carefully.
Yeah, that's very very sage advice.
Oh, I had T-Rex Planet Queen written down.
Ah, that is super. I mean, I feel like T Rex and Mark Bolan don't get mentioned enough. I spoke to a guy who engineered this new tribute album to Mark Bolan,
Right.
but you don't hear his name. Like you hear a lot of classic rock names mentioned quite a lot, and his name like less than others, and his music is
Yeah.
incredible.
Seems to be a lot of musicians seem to love T-Rex. Like most of the musicians I meet are all big T-Rex fans. But I guess now there's like not maybe I don't know like a hit song that people that is still engaging people in the same way as other artists from the time maybe.
He's
Like
just is inserted in pop culture as like Bowie or
yeah,
Queen or Elton or people like that,
yeah, he
even though
doesn't
he
have
hasn't
I
been.
guess I mean he didn't have a chance to make as long a discography as well, but like the records that he did put out
So
um are still so good, and it's you know a lot of it is about how it feels as well, and maybe I don't know doesn't always have the sort of you know hooks of all those great pop Bowie tunes and Queen tunes, but T Rex for me, yeah, is there's just a real you know he really started something with the guitar, really found a new sort of sound with it. I think in a very simple way, just sort of plugging in distorted into the desk. You know, obviously the Beatles did it, but he's definitely kind of had his way with it. You know, making the simple chords into something new is kind of what all artists are trying to do. And I think with Planet Queen, it's just the yeah the energy, the feel of it. It just feels so free and feels I don't know like it has that really fun side that T-Rex has, where he's just always kind of sounds like he's kind of taking the mick. Always sounds like he's having fun, and
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, I think Planet Queen is the sort of perfect into that. I can just kind of groove to it any time of day, and yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Well,
it's a brilliant song.
he has such a cool voice, Mark Bolan.
Yeah. That's it. And just like the weird, like
Yeah,
vibrato stuff he does, like it's just so funny. But like he does it so well.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that. You know, I think that's the best artist really can kind of get away with being, you know, having a looseness and just like enjoying it really, because that's kind of what you want to hear, rather than something a little more clinical. But yeah, Planet Queen is such a tune. I mean, such a tune.